Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing yet another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Richard Stanley, and this film is called Colour Out of Space. So Colour Out of Space is about a family. They live in a very beautiful home in the remote wilderness. You got a father, mother, young son, and a teenage daughter. They seem to be content with their lives, but their lives are going to be changed forever upon the arrival of a meteorite one evening. So the next day, the father and some police go out to investigate, and it just appears to be a meteorite, but what the father doesn't realise initially is that this meteorite has brought something very dangerous with it. And so as each day progresses since the discovery, very strange things start to happen with the wildlife, and it slowly starts to encroach on the family home. And so pretty soon the family are going to be living a nightmare that is going to threaten to get to the point of no return as far as their safety is concerned. So whether or not the father and the rest of the family can fight off this impending doom is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Colour Out of Space. I wanted to watch this movie for a few reasons. Number one, it's a H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. H.P. Lovecraft, I believe, is one of the most fascinating horror writers of all time. Is that every movie that I've seen based on his work has been fascinating. And so that was number one. That's the reason why I wanted to watch it the most, is that it looked like a science fiction / body horror / just a terrifying descent into a nightmare. Number two, you've got Nicolas Cage. Now, Nicolas Cage has been slammed recently for his performances. He kind of reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan as a director, is that a lot of his recent movies in the past had been slammed to no end, and it seemed like the trendy thing just to hate on M. Night Shyamalan. So Nicolas Cage, I believe he deserves that sort of label as a bit of a joke, a little bit more than M. Night Shyamalan did, because he just makes bad decisions as far as taking roles, and I just don't think his performances match the characters that he's playing. But recently, especially in a horror film called Mandy, I thought that character he was playing in Mandy showcased how good Nicolas Cage can be. So I really like him as an actor, and every time I see him in a film, I'm always excited and hopeful that he was going to give another great performance. You've also got the element of Richard Stanley as the director. Now, he is a very curious director to me. I haven't really been exposed to too much of his work. He created a classic, well, it's deemed as a classic from the 1990s called Dust Devil. I've got that on DVD. I haven't actually watched that yet, but I will get around to it. So that was another very curious factor into enticing me to go and watch this film. And so all of those elements together, I was hoping that it was going to be an unforgettable experience. I know this movie has a lot of hype. I was very careful not to put this movie up as far on the pedestal of expectation, because then more often than not you can be very disappointed. But I won't lie, I will say that after seeing the trailer and seeing everything and everyone that was involved with it, I was really excited. And so I had a little bit of hesitation, but I had my fingers crossed that this is going to be something that I was going to be excited about. And I will say this is one of the rare occasions where I really enjoyed being a horror fan. I absolutely love Colour Out of Space because it knows everything. It knows everything about making a scary film, but at the same time a very entertaining movie. This is a film that you don't really have to use your mind a lot. You don't have to use your brain. It's just a descent into a fever-pitch nightmare, and that fever-pitch nightmare is intensified by very vibrant visuals and just nightmarish situations. This is a film that reminded me of a movie called The Void. Now, The Void is one of the most entertaining horror films I've seen in a very long time, and Colour Out of Space had the same vibe to it. It was a throwback to the 80s. This is everything on a visual base. It wasn't something that you necessarily connect with the characters. It's everything that is happening to the characters that makes it so scary. It's the visuals. It's the visuals that just ingrain on your mind, and it just burns into your soul, and you just cannot forget what is happening to this poor family. And so I just thought that was down to the fact that it knew exactly what it wanted to do. It wanted to be a fun film. It wanted to be a grotesque movie, but at the same time, it is a film that will be very memorable from what happens. The set pieces in this film were absolutely brilliant. I loved them. I thought that this poor family, I'm not going to tell you what happens, but there's something that happens to a few family members where I thought to myself, if I was the father of this family, I would have gone out of my mind. And Nicolas Cage, in some scenes, he does go out of his mind, and I thought the character he was portraying allows him to be that silly Nicolas Cage without making it a caricature. This guy was seriously losing his mind, and the viewer will as well, because towards the end of this film, it just goes balls to the wall crazy, and I loved every minute of it. I thought there are some practical gore effects, and there is some CGI, but I thought the CGI gives the movie charm. on. And when you see the film, you'll know what I mean. It's just everything just comes together well. It's just a well-oiled machine. And from the first minute, it feels very ominous through the very good soundtrack that dictates, very stressful situations, and then the movie gets darker and darker and darker, and then it just climaxes into a completely crazy ending that I absolutely loved. I thought the tone was very consistent, and then Richard Stanley, he just knows what he's doing as far as creating good old-fashioned fun horror. And I think a lot of directors have lost that fun sort of entertainment value. They want to make a deeply shocking movie. They want to make a movie that's going to make you cry or be very upset. And yes, there is a place, obviously, for horror, and that's showcasing true horror. But on the other side, there is fun horror. And I just believe this has taken me back to when I was a kid, and I just completely enjoyed films. I wasn't disturbed to a point where I was very upset. But it's just good old-fashioned a good old-fashioned scare fest. And so the science fiction themes, the H.P. Lovecraft elements, combined with Richard Stanley's direction and Nicolas Cage's performance, just makes a film that I absolutely loved. Is that it's not an in-depth film, it's not a movie with a lot of content underneath, but visually it's an absolute treat, and it takes you on a ride that will take you back to your childhood. And it reminds me of why I become a horror fan in the first place. So I really like this movie. Go out there and see it. I'm going to give Colour Out of Space 4.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.